Most of the time when we buy cars, we usually don't give any thought or consideration towards the color. The exception to this is when you have an unlimited budget and you buy a luxury car or a sports car. Every now and then maybe your standard basic one, but I guess most of the time not really. But believe it or not, car colors actually do matter in a few cases that maybe you wouldn't consider. Here are the pros and cons to, well, what I have listed, the 4 most common colors that you see on a car. So why would I make a video explaining why car color is something you might want to consider? Well, it's because there are situations where maybe the color of your car might actually come in handy for a few things. But also it's because I still don't have really any cars to film at the moment other than my own, and I had an idea of another video, except I need to wait for the snow to get off the ground, which I don't think is going to be happening anytime soon, so yeah, I guess we'll stick to this one. But anywho, what are some things that car color can actually affect? Because yes, it does affect certain things that you might not even think about. First thing is visibility. Depending on different conditions, color of your car might actually make a pretty big difference. In some cases, it's not really a strong one though, but it does have a slight effect. Temperature, when you leave your car out in the sun. And then there's just general style, but that is just subjective, flat out, so that doesn't really matter much. But the biggest thing that I'm especially going to be addressing in my list here, visibility. Visibility, not maybe for you, but for anyone else that's driving by you or walking by you or whatever, you need to be seen. Whether you like it or not, they need to know you're there so they don't hit you. Visibility. And it is something that I actually rank in my cardboard. On the cardboard or the car chart. What do I call that thing anymore? I don't remember. It's been too long since I've scored something. But visibility is something that I score. So colors actually do affect it. Here we go. So in this list, I have 4 total colors, the 4 most common, which are the darker colors, the lighter colors, and I'm referring to black versus white. Grays are in there, but I'll explain those in a bit. We also have the blues and the reds. Those are the 4 most common colored cars you see out on the road today. There are others like green, yellow, and purple, and not really many orange, and there's also some other obscure colors, but you don't really see those often enough. So we're just going to talk about the 4 primary colors that you see on the road. So the first one we got is, and also darker grays fit into this category as well. Not just blacks, but also darker grays. I know we got a lot of different gray cars out there, so I'm going to categorize the grays as well, and I'm just going to call them black for the most part. The darker grays at least. So what is an advantage to having a black/dark gray car? Well, you know those days when the sun is just shining so bright that you can barely see anything? Well, having a darker car helps you be able to, well, having the car darker allows you to see it better in those bright sunny conditions. Generally, depending on where you live, if you live up here, this is actually going to be false for every single one, but generally, darker cars actually hide dirt better. There are people who really hate the fact that there's dirt on their cars, so if you want to hide it, generally a darker car actually helps, unless you live where I live, where the roads are heavily salted. Then it turns practically every car white. And obviously, speaking of snow, black and dark gray cars are easier to see in snowy conditions because, well, snow is white and the car is, and this does kind of depend on whether you brush it off or not, but this is kind of true. It does make it easier to see in these snowy conditions, but there are a couple other problems with this color. For example, we all know this. I mean, there's a reason why our clothes are often darker when we're in colder areas and brighter in hotter areas. Darker colors, like this black sweatshirt here, absorb more heat, and it's due to the amount of light they absorb from the sun. It has something to do with the absorption of light. I don't know, the science is weird and all that. Though generally, at least from what I've noticed, if the car is black and it's sitting out in the sun, you touch that metal, it gets hot fast. And the primary reason, aside from the sun and all that, well, the sun emits light and heat. So when you got a color that's going to absorb that light, it's also going to absorb that heat. I think that's how it works, but then again, I'm a professional idiot. What do you expect? So it's definitely hotter in direct sunlight. So be careful if you're going to lean up against it or grab the door handle if it's in direct sunlight for an extended period of time. And then there's the very obvious one. If you plan on doing any night driving, we got headlights and all that, but well, you got headlights on the front and the back. What about the side? Yeah, the black and black makes it really hard to see black cars at night. Seriously, night driving is not great with a black car. I have often missed so many black cars. In fact, I've driven by black cars that actually did not have their headlights on. It was hard to see them, but I could see the clearness of the headlight modules, whatever they are, or whatever. Yeah, don't drive a black car at night if you don't want to get hit or anything. You'll definitely want to be seen at night. Not having a black car helps. So it's primarily these 6 things that can be changed depending on what color car you have. And some of them are just complete opposites to each other, but some are not. Anywho, so those are blacks and dark grays. Next we have whites and silvers. My parents have a white Yukon and a silver Lucerne. Yeah, they both share the same exact issues. So that's how I was able to judge this. Whites and silvers, not dark grays, silvers. So the advantage is obviously that the black cars and dark gray cars don't have. Easier to see at night. They're definitely much easier to see at night because, well, it's a brighter color. They reflect all light that they possibly can. Silver, slightly more difficult, but that's because they're not as bright as white, but to be expected. Oh, I also forgot to mention, I want to point out the personal choices that you can make with these colors. There's different things that these colors can reflect on. For example, black or dark gray, it's usually symbolizing that you're trying to go for a stealthy approach. A stealthy, subtle approach. That's pretty much what I mean by that. That's what it shows to anyone who cares about color all that much. Anywho, back to whites. So in white's case, it's trying to show you're having a brighter approach. You like having bright white colors or such. You like having brighter colors versus the darker hues. You're not going subtle, you're trying to stand out a little bit. That's what I see with white cars at least. Anywho, other advantages. Once again, black cars, they're definitely hotter in the summer, and I'm just talking about touching the outside. The inside is completely dependent on the interior, but the outside of the car in direct sunlight, whiter cars, they might get hot, but not as hot as, they're not anywhere near as hot as a black car. And actually, in the winter, this is actually false, but white cars do have this problem of showing much more dirt, and that's because dirt is usually brown, well, except when there's salt on the roads. Most of the time it turns cars white, and if you have a white car, yeah, I guess it hides that better, but only effective in the winter. But there's more issues to that in the winter as well, which is, well, snowy conditions. They are not easy to see. White and silver cars, they are not easy to see in snowy conditions at all. Also, I mean, this is a bit petty, but I gotta mention these things. Visibility does matter. It really does. So the last thing that white has an issue with is it's not exactly as easy to look at in direct sunlight. So be advised about that. So if you're doing a lot of nighttime driving, definitely get one of these. Definitely get a white car so that way you can be seen. And pretty much, yeah, there's a lot more disadvantages to a white car, but a lot of it is also seasonal as well. So those are black, white, and the in-between cars, which are the neutral colors. Let's move on to some more colors that pop a little bit. And, well, okay, I guess pop is definitely subjective, but alright, so now we got the blues and the reds. I'm going to start off with blues, and I want you guys to keep this in mind. I'm going for the average blue car out there. We got the dark blues and the light blues, and different shades of them have different advantages and all that, but I'm just going to pick the most common blue that you see on a car today, which is this color. Yeah, it's a bit on the darker side, but that's the most common common blue that you'll actually see out on the road. So this is what I'm actually going to base the advantages and disadvantages off of. Lighter blues, they are definitely subjective to change. Alright, so with this common color though, they're definitely easy to see in the daylight. They look a lot like black cars from a distance, at least from my eyes perspective. Remember, I don't exactly have world's greatest vision, but from my perspective, they look like black cars at first, and those are easier to see in daylight, but as they get closer and there's more light reflecting off of them, then you can see the blue color. But they're definitely easier to see in bright conditions. Blue is also used to subtly, you don't exactly like how a white car pops, or it's just too neutral for you, but you don't exactly want something way overstyled, so this color is definitely a subtle pop. It's not black or white or gray, but it's not exactly that big of a standout either. That's the general style that this comes with. Anywho, back to the other stuff. It hides dirt with exceptions. This is, once again, when winter conditions where I live, salt, it's gonna turn it white. It's gonna turn every vehicle white. And sometimes it'll show some dirt, sometimes it won't. It's so iffy, but most of the time it actually hides the dirt. Did I say it shows the first? Wow. Okay, hides the dirt, but there are some exceptions. Blue cars are also easier to see in snowy conditions for the same reason blacks are easier to see in sunny conditions and winter conditions. Generally a darker color, so it's easier to see in the snow. But there are a few other disadvantages. As I've discovered, surprisingly actually, blue it gets warmer than red. So yeah, technically it's hotter in the summer. Not as hot as black because it's not pure black. Blue is reflecting blue light, so it's not absorbing every color like black does, but that doesn't change the fact that it still gets hot. And once again, difficult to see at night because it has a lot of the same properties black does, but it's not exact black. But due to it having a lot of the same properties that black does, it's definitely not easy to see at night. So yeah, if you really do a lot of night driving, I really recommend white or silver car, mostly white. And then we got the last common one, and that's red. So once again, there are so many different shades of red, but I'm going to pull up the most common shade of red that, I know it's kind of subjective because it's what I see, but it's the most common shade of red that you can expect to find on a car. Here's the shade. All right, let's get into the properties of this. And yes, this is not the same red as my car. This is not the same red at all, so my car is slightly different with exceptions, but this is the most common red I actually see out on the road. Anywho, let's get into it. Easy to see in the daylight. It's not exactly perfectly easy. Sometimes it's easy because this general shade is a brighter shade, which makes it a little more difficult, but because it's not pure white, it's easier to see in the daylight. Red is actually used as an expressive color. How? Well, if you take a look at a lot of sports cars and all that, you kind of notice how a lot of them are in red. It's generally, to a car enthusiast perspective, most of the time it's generally characterized as a sporty red, sporty color. So if you are into the sport thing and you want to make your car look sporty, generally a red color is what does the trick. So be advised, I need to warn you about this. I think there's a statistic out there that actually shows that people with red cars get pulled over more often than any other color. So might want to be advised about that. Anywho, it definitely shows dirt because once again, this is a brighter shade of red and this is the most common shade. So it's definitely going to show a lot more dirt, but once again, there are exceptions depending on which shade you have. In my case, well, if you're not counting the salt on the roads, my car actually hides it pretty good because my car is a darker shade of red. Once again, salt, yeah, that's going to turn it white again. This is actually easier to see in snowy conditions. Despite that, usually this is a bright color. It's not, once again, despite that this is a brighter shade, it's actually easier to see in snowy conditions because red and white, they're actually really good contrast colors. So I know my room is blue and white, but personally, I think red and white makes a really good contrast color. And red car, white snow, you can definitely tell them apart. So they are definitely easier to see in the snow than a white car. And they're actually about as, from what I find at least, they're actually just as easy to see as a black or a blue car. Even the brighter shades of red. So yeah, easy to see in snowy conditions. It's also cooler in the summer. Red and blue, they are very similar in temperature, but red is actually generally cooler than the blue, and especially with this case, this specific example of shade, this is a lighter shade. Yep, not exactly going to absorb as much heat as not going to absorb as much sun radiation as professional idiot here. Okay, and the last thing. Despite that, yeah, it's easy to see in the daylight. In fact, there seems to be a trend here. If it's easy to see in the daylight and in snowy conditions, somehow it turns out they're actually just very bad at being visible at night. And I tried so hard. I even tried looking out the window. My car's red, and even though, yeah, it's a darker shade, I tried looking out the window to see if I could see my car in pitch black or with moonlight, because in this case there was actually moonlight out. No, I could not see it. I tried so hard. I even tried to look for the chrome trim on it, but nope, I could not find my car. So, yep, red is not going to be visible at night, even this particular shade. So be advised about that. If you really want something visible at night, you have to go for white, despite that it's not exactly daylight or snow friendly. So I have no idea if this makes an impact on anything, but these are just some general interesting facts that I've noticed as I've been driving. I paid attention to car colors and tried to notice some details about visibility with them. Hopefully, maybe this might make some good use for you, but I have no idea. So once again, these are the 4 most common colors, and the grays are the gray area as for the neutral colors. But yeah, these are the 4 most common colors. There are other ones like yellow and all that, which come with their own properties. But considering how few cars we see in yellow or green or purple and such, I decided not to include them on this list, because generally when you see a car drive by, it's either black, white, somewhere in between, red or blue. That's generally what I see. So yeah, those are the advantages and disadvantages to all the colors, and I guess I slipped in there what type of style they show. Hope you made use of this. I am just rambling at this point. Thank you for watching. Do me a favor and interact with the stuff below. My name is DeWolf, Random Alpha, signing out.